Hello, I'm Pastor David Beaver here with another encouragement video entitled Hope in These COVID Days. My whole life I've been blessed with great and positive male influences to look up to, and I do mean blessed. All along the way, older men in my life have been examples of what to do and what not to do. Some knew I was watching and some did not. Some of these men spoke into my life with words of encouragement and correction, and some just I watched from a distance. Some had godly influence, and some did not. The first and greatest of these men is my father. Many of you know Jack Beaver, and will agree with me when I say he is a man who loves and serves God. He is humble, and he thinks of others more than himself. He is one of the funniest men I've ever known. He is a great friend to others, and he serves freely those who are in need. My dad owned his own gas station for years, and I worked for him, and I loved it. He was a fair and a kind boss, and I thought he was a little too kind and a little too tolerant at times. He could have probably made a lot more money than he did, but he focused on customers and employees more than his own gain. He loves my mom, he loves my sister, he loves my wife, and he loves my kids. What more could I ask for? If my dad was the only positive influence, male influence in my life, I could die a happy and blessed man. But luckily for me, he was not the only positive male influence in my life. When I was young, we lived in a small trailer park. It was my small little world. We moved away when I was 13, but in this trailer park, I had two other men I looked up to and who treated me much better than I deserved to be treated. One of them was this old guy. He was a couple years older than my dad. His name was Kenny Crawford. I could do nothing wrong in this guy's eyes. He had two girls of his own, and I know he loved them very much, but I think he liked me because he thought of me as a son. The only flaw that Kenny had was that he was a USC fan, but I learned to love him anyways. And the other guy, he was 4 years older than me. His name was Jim Van Kerkhoff. Jim was a stud. Just saying his name is like saying Achilles, to me. He's the strongest, he's the toughest, and most athletic guy I had ever met in my life. As far as I could see, he dominated the world. And yet he liked me. He treated me like I was his little brother. He would actually come over to my house and see if I could play. I wanted to be Jim. The girls loved him, and the guys admired him and or feared him. But most importantly, no one messed with me because of Jim. When we moved from the trailer park, I was 13, and we started coming to this church shortly after that. I've been attending this church with my family for 41 years now. I was going to Arroyo Seco Junior High. I just think it's amazing I've been here that long. But anyways, it was in this youth group at a beach retreat that I accepted the Lord. And I was baptized shortly after that at the age of 14. And I was influenced then by a man by the name of Jack Castleberry to give my life to Jesus at that time. He influenced me, he encouraged me, and it was his life and his example that led me to the Lord. I have been influenced and mentored by many men in this church, and I am so very thankful to the Lord for these men in my life. In my 20s, God brought to me Chris Finn into my life, probably one of the greatest influences at a crucial time in my life. Chris and his wife Liz, they helped me with the transition of adulting into my Christian life. Chris was a man with a crazy past from New York, who completely surrendered to the Lord. I saw through Chris that you didn't have to compromise your faith because of your career. You could do both extremely well, and he did. He was very successful in business and very successful in ministry. They were never shy or reserved when either correcting or encouraging me. When Don and I started having kids, that's when Gary Newman became a mentor to me. We never talked about it, but I watched him from a distance, how he loved, admired, and honored his wife, Karen, how he was and still is tender and affectionate with his boys and now his grandchildren, how he invested in teaching and leading Chris and Jay to becoming great men of God, and how he handled money on a teacher's salary, but mostly how Gary had handled pain and loss in his life. How he had demonstrated his faith and his trust in the Lord and an inner strength that I don't think most men have. Then as I got older, I saw Ray Robinson. He was a senior vice president of a Fortune 500 company, yet completely humble and unassuming. Love and care for his wife, Margaret, in sickness and in health. He raised 6 kids, and he serves in the church in almost every known leadership position available over the years. Watching Ray navigate it all while demonstrating godly wisdom and values, I was amazed. The way Ray raised his 6 kids to be independent thinkers, confident, compassionate, it's amazing to me. This church has greatly benefited from Ray's wisdom and steadfast service to the Lord, and I have benefited by watching and learning from Ray. And we continue to benefit from knowing and serving with his kids who serve here at this church today. One of the men I have not mentioned, and the reason for basically writing this, is Ron Hanna. Ron Hanna came to this church to be our full-time paid youth pastor in 1982 or 83. I'm not exactly sure. I know I was a sophomore or a junior at Saugus High, I believe. I can't remember. So Ron served here for 20 plus years until August 2003. Ron went to be with the Lord on Saturday, December 5th, just last Saturday, after having a heart attack on Monday, December 1st, while he was out for a run. Ron was one of the men I didn't know that I was even watching. He had been such an influence in my life, but his ministry to the church and his impact on the kids in this community for years was nothing less than inspiring. 2 things that stand out to me about Ron that I always admired and I wanted to emulate in my ministry and my Christian journey was this. Number 1 was Ron's ability, the ability Ron had to see others or to see in others what they could be or would be rather than what they were currently demonstrating in that time of their life. Ron always saw the good in people. He always saw God's purpose for them. His skateboard ministry received a lot of criticism because of the appearance of the people that were hanging out, because of the volume of the music, because of the cigarette smoking or the cussing, but Ron only saw a ripe harvest field. Ron would listen intently without judgment, encouraging people to be their best version of themselves. Mercy, generosity, and hospitality are gifts this man had in spades. The second was his runner's endurance and tenacity to stay focused on the eternal goal, on his ministry. Ron was a runner, and that is what he was doing when he suffered his heart attack. In Ron's life and his ministry, I saw this intentional and steady pace. When his ministry suffered uphill pressure, Ron kept his head down and kept running that same pace. When it was the flat runs, Ron kept running that same pace. And when it was that downhill, the fun part of their easier part of ministering, when it was going well and exceptionally and without any trials or tribulations, he maintained that same pace. He kept his eyes on God. He didn't run ahead of God. He ran with God. He kept his eyes on the prize. Ron had an endurance for running and an enthusiasm for running God's race that was inspirational and encouraging. Ron was always encouraging us to run with him the race God set out before us. I want to do a mashup of 2 verses that Paul said that I think Captain Ron, that's what people called him, Captain Ron, displayed the whole time that I knew him. The first one is 1 Corinthians 9:24, and the second one is mashed up with 9:24 is Hebrews 12:1. It says this: Do you not know let me start again. Do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run that you might obtain it. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely. Let us run with endurance the race that is set out before us. Ron ran that race, and I believe fully that he obtained the prize of heaven and being in the presence of God Almighty for eternity. I also believe that he is now in that great cloud of witnesses, encouraging us to run with endurance the race that has been set out before us, with Ron's steadfast pace and tenacity, keeping that pace, keeping that tenacity, keeping our head down, keeping our eyes on the goal, on the prize, and that is heaven. I thank God for this church and what it has meant to me and my family for many years. And I thank God for the men he has put in my life as godly examples and mentors. This is only a short list of names of the great men I've had to look up to in my life. I didn't even mention my father-in-law, Tom Edgington, or John Ogg, or Jerry Walker, my brother-in-law, Chris Hanning, or Pastor Billy. I have been abundantly blessed. But this is an encouragement video, so I want to encourage you with this. Pastor Ron's last sermon was on light. He got the idea for this sermon while he was running. And I just want to say, let your light shine. Be a light to a young man or a young woman that is bumping around in the dark of life, like I was doing, trying to figure this stuff out. You are blessed to be a blessing. Ron and these other men have been a blessing to me, and I thank God for them, and I thank God for you. God bless you. Be encouraged. Be safe. Keep yourself masked on, hands washed, and free from COVID. And just God bless you during these holiday seasons. Bye-bye.